Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome back to Den of the Wonder. So today we have a little witchy book review for you guys. I've read a couple of books lately, so I thought it would be fun to get on here and talk about them with you guys. Um, I know I promised some more grimoire stuff, but I kind of hit like a little wall with that, so I just took those and I put them to the side, and I'll come back to those later when I feel a little more inspired and um, a little more directed with where I want to go with those. But for now, I thought it would be fun to sort of dabble in some other witchy things, like the book reviews, which I know I haven't done for a while. And since I have, like I said, had them stacking up, I thought we would just do a couple of these really quick. In this review, I'm going to cover 3 books, one at length, the second not so lengthy, and then the third less lengthy. Mostly because reading this book made me remember another book, which then made me like inspired to go back and read the third book. So I read all 3 of these books like sequentially. And I thought it would be kind of fun to share and compare, but also I kind of struggled with whether or not I was going to actually do this review, because I didn't particularly care for this book. So I started to think like maybe it's not so cool to get on and like, have a book review where I'm kind of bashing the book that I'm talking about. But then the more I thought about it, the less I thought like it would be disingenuous and insincere of me to get on and just be like, I loved every single book all the time when I don't. And I think it's fair. I know that this book has some pretty positive ratings, but it didn't resonate with me, and that's okay. But I also felt like some things were a little potentially problematic or dismissive, and that really kind of struck a chord with me while I was reading this book. And so I'll get more into that. But the book in question is You Are a Goddess by Sophie Bashford. The subtitle is Working with the Sacred Feminine to Awaken, Heal, and Transform. I listened to this as an audiobook. It is read by Sophie Bashford. And usually I get pretty hyped when authors read their own books, but right off the bat, it was probably the main problem I had with this book was listening to her read it. I don't understand why. Usually when authors read their own work, all the right emotions and things come across, but when she read it, it was a little like flat and a little dull, and it didn't really have I guess the gravitas, the weight behind it that I think that she was going for when she was reading it herself. I don't know. I don't actually know a lot about the author, so um, this is like the first book that I read by her, so I don't know if this is like just how she typically is, or if this is just something different. This book came out last year, I believe, in 2018. Basically, this book works through several different goddesses and how to apply them to your life, and how she herself, like, this book is kind of a little bit of a memoir almost, because every section she kind of explains how this goddess helped her through something or other. And I guess that's where we're going to talk about the second problem I had with this book, which was I listened to this on the audiobook, like I said. It took like an hour to get through the introduction and the first like opening stuff. There's like a letter in the beginning to men who want to date an awakened woman, which I also felt was really dismissive towards men, just in general, and it kind of came across weird. It was like the first thing, like immediately once the book starts, that starts playing, and that was just really strange to me. Like, it just came out of nowhere, and I was like, wait, what is this? I thought I was here to listen to like a book about different goddesses, not a book that kind of tells men like, if you can't hang with us, like, you can't sit with us. So that was kind of a weird thing. I don't know if that's what she intended. That's just how I interpreted it. So that already didn't resonate. And then, like I said, the introduction was an hour long, which was a struggle. Like, I usually am like a super completionist, and so I want to finish like a book from start to finish. But I like had to like talk myself down out of skipping through the introduction because it was bad. And I usually like I don't mind an introduction, but if the audiobook takes an hour, I can only imagine what it feels like trying to read it. And probably reading it would have gone faster because I know I looked to see the actual physical book to see how long that introduction was, and it's not very long, but I mean, that's just kind of how she reads, I guess. So if that helps you understand why I struggled with listening to her read the book, there it is. That's what I thought. So there's 9 different goddesses that she goes through, and I don't remember all of them offhand. I know that the first one was Kali, and I kind of feel like some of the stuff was good. I'm not going to say like it was all bad and I didn't like anything. I would definitely give this book like a 3 out of 5, or maybe like a 2.5 out of 5. It was like right in the middle ground. Like, I don't hate this book. I don't love this book. I wouldn't personally recommend it to anybody unless they're trying to like get their feet wet in like different goddesses and just kind of get a little bit of a taste of what working with those different deities or aspects of deity might be like. But the first goddess she chose was Kali, and I feel like she went like with a really soft version of Kali, and I feel like I keep saying I feel like a lot. I feel like she only scraped the surface, and then it just seemed kind of like I don't want to say a whitewashing, but like maybe a lack of understanding of working with Kali, because it just sort of hit one facet and not the rest, and it didn't really delve into the less pleasant aspects of working with a dark deity like Kali, and I don't really appreciate that, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Um, if you're gonna pick a dark goddess to put into your book, I feel like you should hit the dark aspects and not just like she's a creator of change and like that's it. Because that's really like pinky nail in the water of the depth that's in this goddess. Also, Kali is one of the deities, like the few deities from a living religion that has a plethora of deities to work with. And I feel like if you're going to choose aspects from living religions, you should kind of research those living religions and see how they worship and pay respect to those deities in question. And none of that is like reflected in here. It's just kind of a pick and choose what suits you. A couple of the other deities were Lilith and I want to say Mary Magdalene. It might have been the Virgin Mary. Let me actually look. Let me do some like further looking. Hold on a second. Okay, we're back, and it's literally been like less than a second for you guys. I went and looked up the whole list so I could give it to you. So it goes Kali, Mother Mary, Kuan Yin, the Avalon priestesses, Hecate, Aphrodite, Lilith, Mary Magdalene, and Isis. So those are the deities she chose to work with. And like they don't get very deep or detailed, and there's not a lot of discussion about their personal myth or lore, just sort of a quick explanation, and then she gets into it. Like I said, every section she kind of talks about how she used these deities in her own personal life, which like I kind of like and then kind of don't like. Like, I like hearing about people's personal experiences, but it kind of got to the point where I was like, is this a book about you or is it for us? Like, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do with this information, because like my personal experience working with this deity might be different, although I understand that the structure of this book is meant to inform a healing sort of process. I didn't get that, but like I said, the book didn't really resonate with me, so that didn't really connect. It did, however, give me some interesting things to think about, and there was a couple of things I wanted to look up afterwards, so hooray for the pursuit of knowledge. That was a good thing about that. But like I said, yeah, this book just didn't resonate to me. I also felt like she doesn't go outright to say it, and there's even like a line or two that's kind of inclusive, but for the most part, I felt like this was really geared towards like cisgendered women and not like the general population of women who identify as women, and that also felt a little exclusionary to me. I wish I had more positive things to say. Like I said, this would be a good primer I wouldn't personally recommend it. It's not my favorite book. I have a book at the end of this that I will recommend if you're looking to get into working with like various female aspects of divinity in order to heal and transform. But this book was not it for me. Your experiences might be different. If you have read this book, I'd be very interested in knowing what your takeaway from it was, because maybe reading it in print instead of hearing the audiobook would sort of change the experience of it. But I listened to the audiobook, so this is my takeaway. Do with it what you will. And hopefully that will help you if you were looking at this book or interested in this book in the future. It does have a lot of positive reviews, and I will say a lot of people really seem to enjoy it. So it might just be me being a little like overly pessimistic and critical of the book. I tend to be that way, so it happens. But yeah, so that was the first book I read. And then while I was listening to this book, I kept thinking about a book that I knew I had read before. Because as I was listening, I was like, I swear I've heard this before. I've read a book just like this. Is it this book? And I had to like stop and go look up the history of this book to figure out had I read this book before, because it just like it struck like a chord in my brain where I was like, you've heard this. You've heard something similar to this before. And since the book came out in 2018, I was like, there's no way that it was this book in particular. Also, what I remember, it was a little bit different. So that brings me to this other book. So hold on, I will show it to you in a moment. So this book, A Goddess is a Girl's Best Friend by Laurie Sue Brockway. I have the physical copy of this book, but I'm not going to lie, you guys, right before I went to film this, I couldn't find it. And that made me very sad. So I had to find the cover image. I have read the actual physical book, and it's somewhere in my house, and I'll find it probably 2 days after I put this up live. Because that's just how my life works, and we're still like in retrograde, so I'm not surprised. But this book actually came out in 2002, and that's when I bought it. And I've had it on my shelf every place I've lived since 2002. And the funny thing is, when I like thought about Sophie Bashford's book, I was like, I have to find this book. So I start digging through my shelves to see if there's something similar. And I narrow on this book, and I pull it off the shelf, and I look at it, and I'm like, yeah, I remember buying this book as like a little baby witch just starting out and being like in the one little shelf occult section of our bookstore, being like, I'm going to buy this book, and this is going to be like my introduction to witchcraft. I'm going to be so witchy. And I actually only read 45 pages of it, and then I put it together, and then I stuck it onto my bookshelf, and I forgot it forever. And I never read it again ever since then. Not that I didn't enjoy it, because I got a little kernel of information from it, and then that launched me into like a whole different trajectory, and I went and looked up more witchier books, because it wasn't a very witchy book. It was pretty simple. So that being said, this book is 17 years old. So take that with a little grain of salt. It doesn't reflect 2019 sensibilities, although it doesn't totally trash on them either, which I was surprised to see. It wasn't particularly exclusionary, which I really appreciated. And it also was just kind of fun. So like, I would recommend this book, having gone back and finally reread it 17 years after I bought it. I would recommend this book if you had no experience working with female aspects of divinity and wanted to kind of see if there was a deity that resonated with you, because this book was just fun. She gives you their lore, their backstory, a little bit about working with them, and then some ways to incorporate them in your lives. And she also picks some really interesting, like, obscure deities too. Like there's Sekhmet, and there's Nike, and just like how these goddesses can help you achieve airplanes flying overhead. So sorry about that. Help you achieve different things in your life. Like you can work with Nike for victory, and like I think Sekhmet was for like success in business, like conquering, adversaries in business, like things like that. And it was really fun. In the Lilith section, because of course there's always a Lilith section, it talks about being like a rebel and how you can go cut up like a t-shirt and like use that as like your sort of dress up Lilith armor to go out and be like a rebel, like a riot girl, right? Which I love. I absolutely love that idea. Um, I thought it was really fun. I would give this like 3.5 out of 4. It's not the most profound book. It's not even particularly witchy. It's got some meditations. It's got little things that you can do in your life. Ways to incorporate that. Like Aphrodite had some beauty rituals, of course. Um, Little things to bring a little bit of that goddess energy into your life, which I thought was really fun. And it was kind of surprising to think that I had such a little gem on my bookshelf that I never read again after, uh, like 45 pages. I was like, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm on to other things. Which shows you what kind of attention span I had as a teenager. But also, like, it was fun to get like a little throwback and see the book that I thought was going to be like my super tome of witchiness. Although, why with this title I thought it was going to be, I don't know. But it was a fun read, and I would definitely recommend it if you're just looking to kind of get a little sprinkling of goddess energy in your life. Don't take it as like gospel though, you guys, because it's an old book, and like I said, it goes from like a fun, sort of like playful aspect, so it's not going to be the most serious of serious things. So, that is it. That's all I have about this book. And now, a book that I actually managed to find the physical copy of because it doesn't actually leave my bedside, and my favorite book of 2019, The Holy Wild. This is by Danielle Dulsky. If you follow me on Instagram, on my main channel, you might have seen I share this book. I love this book. I follow the author. I love her stuff. I have her other book too, Woman Most Wild. Love that book and would recommend it greatly, and I might do a review on that later in the future. I'm not going to say soon because probably not soon. I'm not even going to do a full review on this book because my little online witchy group of friends are going to be going over this book again next year. So as we work through it, I might bring this book up and do like a more in-depth deep dive. I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. Like 5 out of 5, 6 out of 5. Take it, like turn it from 10, take it all the way to 11. Just crank that up. I love this book so much. Like, I have the audiobook, and listening to the audiobook made me want to go like kick down the patriarchy and also like reclaim every like aspect of my life and like gain super control. But also I went and bought the physical copy because I love the audiobook so much. It is read by the author, and like the way that Danielle Dulsky writes is very lyrical. It's full of lots of prose. um it's really beautiful, but it can be really thick and like a little heavy, especially if you're just reading. But listening to somebody say it to you made like a big difference. And even going back and just reading like Woman Most Wild, I don't have the audiobook for that because she isn't the narrator for that audiobook. And also the narrator for that audiobook sounds like a robot. Like if you have Audible, go listen to the sample. She sounds like a robot. So I didn't actually get the audiobook for that one. But reading that book is a little bit heavy because you're like, there's a lot of like lyrical prose to get through to get to the more substantive parts. But listening to it, like, amazing. Just like the way that she reads it really captures like the energy of the words, and it just brings it all really alive. That being said, it is not hard to read the book. You just have to be prepared for something a little more heady than you might be necessarily used to, because it's not like a dry textbook. I don't know how much more I want to talk about this because like I said, I'm going to talk about it more next year as my little group and I work through this book. I absolutely love this book, and this book has 5 sections that go over the 5 elements, and also reclaiming and retelling of stories about women in the Bible. In telling that, I saw some reviews from people who were upset that it had a lot of stuff from the Bible. It's not really Bible-y so much as it's reclaiming a narrative that wasn't told by women, and I really appreciated that, and I thought it was really interesting. Also, she kind of avoids any issues of like cultural appropriation by choosing this route. And then when she does talk about deities from other cultures who tie into what she's trying to get across, she also gives a whole like section on books written by people of color and people of those various cultures about those deities. And I think that's like really invaluable. It gave me a lot of things like on my wish list or things that I wanted to read and follow up on. And I just thought that was really impressive. This book is super inclusive. Like to the point where like anybody can read this book and get something from it. And I also really like appreciated that, because I think that a lot of women who identify as women tend to get excluded, especially in the pagan community, because there's such a duality with a lot of deity worship that people tend to draw hard lines, and I don't think that's actually necessary or accurate or even appropriate. So I really like enjoy things that are inclusive to everybody, and this book was definitely super inclusive to that. Nobody was excluded. I would highly recommend this book. I'm going to be reading it again, so I'll have read it like 3 times just since I bought it, and I didn't buy it that long ago. So yeah, I guess that's all I have to say for right now. I will come back and talk more about this book in depth later, especially as I get a little more hands-on working with it, because I've only read it a couple times and done a little bit of the exercises, but I haven't actually worked through it, and so that's what we're going to be doing through the next year, is actually working through it. So I'll let you know my experiences with that, and if you would like to join me, I'll put some more details about it in a future video when I start to work through it, and we can start a discussion on the YouTube like comment section about it, or even maybe on my Instagram, wherever you guys are more comfortable, if you choose to follow along or work through any of this. If you have read this book, I would be very interested in knowing what your thoughts are about it, or any of the books that I have mentioned in this video alone. That's going to be it for me for now, you guys. I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching, and happy travels. Bye!